But so that movie came out, and I think it was a history a lot of people didn't know.
Okay.
For the most part, I want to say the mainstream didn't know mainly because they killed it off. They hid it in history. They don't teach it because they don't want people to do what he did.
Right.
But we get into more of it later. But my main question for after watching the movie was why can't we unite like that anymore?
I think the quick answer is the powers that be, and as you saw the movie, the FBI, and basically the powers that run the governing bodies of the world, or I should say of the United States. They don't want that to happen, and that's essentially why Fred Hampton was murdered. Or assassinated. That's essentially why all these powerful leaders end up getting taken out. Anytime they start to preach peace, that's when all the bullshit happens, right? And you can take this even if people want to look at modern day people. If you don't want to if you can't think that far, I still say people like Nipsey and things like that. Anytime you're on a mission, like when you start to figure out that the world is way better together than it is apart and separated. Or if you find out the real enemy is the elites and all these rich people that keep us in these boxes and everything, that's when everything gets scary. And usually, sadly enough, that's when someone dies. And I feel like it's because they make it to where they control the media, they control what the fuck we watch. Even we can go with music. There was a mandate that for some reason, a lot of these labels never want to get into it. I've seen music documentaries on damn near everybody, and there's so many things. I've seen every death row documentary ever, right? But they never talk about how there was a mandate, especially out of the late 80s going into 90s, and probably since then, where these labels didn't sign anyone except gangster rap artists. And it's why? Why? You got to think about it. You come out the late 80s with NWA. And then after them, Ice Cube goes solo. But then after Ice Cube, you have the biggest rapper in the world, essentially, is Snoop Dogg, who's a Crip from Long Beach. And now you have this whole freaking label, Death Row, that's basically just all gangbangers, essentially, right? And then it goes from there, and then it just keeps growing to all these different labels. And now you fast forward to today, we just said Bobby Shmurda's out. Dude went in on a RICO charge because his whole gang, he was affiliated with a whole gang and everything like that. And it's they sell us this because there's a lot of thought and theory that goes into the idea that they sell us this music to basically destroy us from the inside. That's why we choose to go out and shoot people and harm people, and instead of talking and using our words, fucking so and so said shoot the niggas. Now that's my mindset. I'm shooting niggas out here.
Hold up a mirror, but they paint the mirror this is what you look like.
Exactly. So then you fall into the trap. No, this is what we do. This is what we do out here. We shoot people, we rob people, we this and that and whatever. And of course, we don't think about it because when we're partying and everything, it's just a song.
Right.
But then you don't even understand why you're angry when certain songs come on. But I feel like they've mastered the art of there was something back in the day where they said that all those way back in the day, they would use the arts for holistic healings and shit like that. I feel like they figured out that the arts, music, film, they could really make you do whatever if they painted a certain
so instead of the healing, which most people use music for, they do the opposite, just on the low end. They don't talk about it.
Exactly.
It's the same shit. Yeah, that makes sense. And the whole killing people before it gains any traction, like a Nipsey, because he was gaining traction a lot, and I think they probably did figure it out with people like Martin Luther King, Malcolm.
Yeah.
Now, what's his name?
Fred Hampton.
I almost said Dead Clue. Fred Hampton. So, they let them go. Keep going. They were we just got to arrest them. They get arrested. They become heroes, and they get more of a following because they get arrested.
Right.
And then with the Fred Hampton one, they just let's just murder him. And that's it. The thing died. Right. It did. It fucking died. And it's back. I guess in a sense, it was something. It's there's a form of it that's back.
Right.
And his son runs it, and I think his wife too.
Right.
But Yeah, it makes sense. It's like before these people start gaining too much traction, kill them.
Yeah.
And we make it seem like it's just another day in their neighborhood.
Yeah, because, I mean, sad to say, it works because that time period, like the 70s, for people who were alive back then and people who experienced it, they talk about that because that was probably the last time we had unification for black people, for a lot of minorities out here. We had a sense of pride in being us. It wasn't like something where we had to mask or hide the fact that we're this, or we don't want to come off like a certain type of way.
Proud of being us and taking care of ourselves without assistance from like a whole bunch of shit. Like the whole the feeding kids program they had.
The meal programs.
Yeah, I was just like, holy shit! Like they just did it. They were just feeding kids. Like they're not feeding us for. And then the whole thing where he like went into
the crowns.
Was it not that? And then also where it was like a bunch of white people when they were talking about something.
It was basically today would be the Patriots.
So yeah, it would be like that. And he walked in and it was just like they're fitting the same lines.
I said the Patriots. They were called the Patriots in the movie, but today it would be the Proud Boys. There you go.
Yeah, so he walked into something equivalent to the Proud Boys and was just like, look, they're tricking you too. They're tricking like just like how they're treating us. They treat you just with like a little bit of a shine, you know, shit like that. So we all got to step together. And he actually united like them and some Puerto Ricans from there, and they didn't really go into like how many people united, but he had them.
Yeah, I was telling my wife while we were watching the movie, I had paused it after he walked into the Patriots or the Proud Boys, you'd call them today, after that meeting, and I was like, here's the funny thing, like this is all like for the most part true stuff, and I know some of the stuff is like artistic.
Right, it has to be. Right. That's how you make movies.
Right. So, but I was like, here's the thing, people don't realize, I hate when people get into like, oh, like y'all don't want to be revolutionary, y'all don't want to be like the Black Panthers and shit like that. People don't realize that the Crowns, I believe, in the movie, that was if you watch the movie, that was the rival group that they were kind of not adversarial with, but it was kind of like a territory thing. And it was dope to hear like when he's talking to the leader of the Crowns, the Crown dude is like, basically like, nigga, we've been doing meal programs out here for this, like, so just because you do it now, you're supposed to be like better than us or whatever. And I believe the Crowns today are the Vice Lords. Like, people don't realize that the Black Panthers, when they broke apart, separated, like, the initial Crips come from the Black Panthers, the initial Bloods come from the Black Panthers. All these gangs that a lot of, like, that at least have history in the United States, a lot of the black ones come from the Black Panthers. So they had revolutionary ties. They were very for the people. Right. But what happened, like I said, the powers that be made sure that wasn't going to stay long. Right.
They took out all the honorable shit and just left the violence part of it.
Yeah, and they threw in, as we know, they threw in drugs, they threw in crack, they threw in guns that no one had at that time. Because as you see, even the scene where the whole shootout happens or whatever, they were shooting at cops with shotguns from like, which I'm like, that doesn't.
I had the same thought when I was watching that scene. I was just like, no way, you're not hitting nobody.
You're not hitting anybody with that. Like, but that's what they had. There was no automatic weapons. There was no freaking, all this crazy stuff that didn't exist yet. It wasn't until you get to out of the 70s into the 80s where now you start to see the automatic weapons and shit happen. But then that's when gangbanging becomes a thing. And now, instead of killing for a good purpose, you're killing people for territory over money.
One square block.
Exactly.
Kind of shit. And the short-sightedness rather than the whole revolutionary shit.
You shut up all the revolutionaries. You shut up all the people who are trying to teach you. And then you leave people with no hope. Once you take away the hope, then all you have is now we have to survive. Survival instincts come in. Now we doing what we got to do out here. It doesn't matter about going against the man. I'm with my brothers and we need to eat. That's it.
It's as simple as that. It's not no big conspiracy shit. That's all it is basically. And it seems like they all, because one of the reasons I think it doesn't happen anymore either, besides that stuff,
right?
Everyone's afraid to be the main one because really you can't tell if the character Lakeith played, I forget his name, you can't tell if that's happening. Huh?
William O'Neill.
You can't tell if there's people like that, Yeah. And it's understandable that he did it. Like, I get why. It's like he got caught up and a thing. He had to be a CI,
right,
kind of shit, and he had to do so he could stay out of prison for himself. Because I get that fear, you know. It's just like if he goes to prison, then ain't no one helping him. There's no one behind him, kind of shit.
Yeah, but still, I just don't look at that as honorable because you.
Oh no, it's not honorable, but it's understandable because it's like do I go to jail or like do I take this deal that would keep me out of jail and I just got to do all this shit? And it seemed for like a bit that, especially at the end, I don't want to kill it for everybody, but he was really falling into the Black Panthers. Like he would have taken over if it wasn't for that fear of what the FBI was doing to him.
Yeah, if you read any articles with him, and he's done a bunch, which is weird. But if you read any articles with him, or you read like any of his family members that were around during that time and knew what was going on, they said it themselves that he was becoming pretty much a Black Panther. Like in his mind, he was a Black Panther, and he understood what they were fighting against because he felt the same oppression from the cops making him do this stuff.
Right.
The big thing about it, though, is I don't think fear is a motherfucker because like he knew what was going on, and again, if you watch the movie, they kind of paint it in a way where he's like, "Oh, I didn't like y'all weren't supposed to kill him or whatever, right?" And again, if you watch the movie, there's some things that I don't know are factual. I really don't know.
Like the fact that FBI agent convinced him is like, look, the Black Panthers are essentially the KKK, just the other side of the coin. It's the same thing. They're talking about violence and blah, 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 and we're trying to bring them peacefully and shit, which was a lie.
And also, I'm like, common sense, bro. You're Black, so I mean,
they don't.
I think you can see the difference.
They did. They were doing things that in some in the movie where he would come into that guy's house, the FBI agent's house, and like he would treat him like just a regular person, which I'm sure, especially back then, would be like, what's going on? Like this is weird, and it's kind of making him feel like one of them.
Right.
So again, but that's all just tactics to. You got to get your CI to trust you to do all these things for you and shit like that. So
it was the thing he's going to get a lot of the credit for bringing down the Black Panthers. But if you see the movie, if you know the story about the group and everything, he wasn't the only CI that was in the Black Panthers. There was a bunch. Yeah. And like I said, they were infiltrated from the inside and they got taken down. Sadly, a lot of people didn't want to deal with the consequences of doing some things, so they had to make their own decisions. But I just hate the fact that I feel like if you watch the movie, he's going to get painted in a light where it's fair to some degree, but also it's unfair because you don't know the time period, you don't know the era, so you don't know what he would have had to gone through because for the charges that he had against him. But also, like that movie, like I said, I don't know if it's factual that he poisoned them. I do not know if it's factual. Everything I've read on that, he didn't, like, his portion of it was giving the layout of the house so they can go and arrest him.
Right.
There was nothing about him poisoning him because
sleeping pills or whatever.
No, because essentially, I think the poison was supposed to kill him.
Oh, in the movie, I thought it was he gave him like it's gonna make him real sleepy.
No, because that's why he was having like that internal struggle and everything. Yeah, because he was the poison was supposed to kill him. And then if you remember the one dude, I think his name is Lil Rel. We are spoiling the movie.
It's been out for a while now.
Y'all got HBO Max.
It's history.
Yeah, but when he gives him the vial, he says, just take out your little buddy, and then you should be done. And then he goes like, so you want me to? He's like, I'm not doing that. And then as he's walking to his car, he said, look, you want him to go easy. He was like, you don't want it the other way, so make it easy. And essentially, he was like, poison him. It won't hurt him, right. And then that'll be it. Like, so that's the only part I don't know if that's factual because from everything I've read, he gave the layout to the house to go arrest him,
and then they shot him.
Right. And that was why, because afterwards, that is true. Because if you know the whole story, he ends up going back to the apartment and he's like fucking shocked because he can't believe they did that.
Right.
Because the dude, the Mitchell guy, pretty much essentially told him like, yeah, we're just gonna arrest him. But they double crossed him.
God, that shit was just intense, and like I didn't know the history of it. I knew like some of the stuff, like the stuff that they were doing, and it was revolutionizing, and they shut that shit down fast. Yeah. I don't know the details of it, and it was just that guy was 21.
Yeah, he did all that at 21 years old and everything, and even to have, he was a real one because even with the bid, he was just like, it's only 5 years. Like he was gonna do 5 years for some ice cream, and he was just like, I'm straight with that. Like, you know, by the time I get out, we'll still be strong. Nope, they cut all that shit out. Like they killed every bit of that, and that's, like you said, it's a history lesson, but also I feel like people, the reason why we can't do that today is because there isn't enough organization with shit like that today, because literally it's not even like the idea of like, oh, there's one leader, because there wasn't. He was the leader of the Chicago chapter, but there was other chapters everywhere else, right? It was just that to have the idea that we have one single solitary purpose, that can't be done today, because everyone has.
Because even now, like let's say with use Black Lives Matter as an example, it starts out when it first gets a thing, it's just like, oh, it's all about black people, minorities, and, you know, blah blah blah. And then it starts to fraction off into now it's black trans life, black gay life. Like, what? No, it's like, what does that do besides break us apart and break our strength up?
Right.
Like, I get it, but we got to stay strong as fuck so that we get just across the board.
Right.
Help all these people that need help.
And then, again, that's where you get the people who fraction off into basically getting their interests pushed and not whatever. We talked about this on one of our first episodes or whatever, but that was it still is my big issue with the LGBTQ community, because I feel like they piggybacked off the backs of the civil rights movement and then kind of waited in the shadows. All this shit happened. And then, like today, now it's on the forefront. It's like, oh, ha! Now we're out here. Now we're going to cancel everybody for all these things, which they should rightfully do because it's wrong. Cool. And then it's like they took all these steps, and it's like they forgot about everyone else.
Right, the people that started it.
Yeah, and they forgot about all the other groups that they could help. Instead of being like, oh, we want equal rights for lesbian, gays, blah, blah, blah. It should have been like, we want that. And not to mention this, that, and the third, and whatever, but they didn't do it. And that's why I feel like when it comes to minorities, that'll always be there until we get this new generation who seems like they're not fucking into that at all. Right. Until they start becoming the leaders that they need to be, because there's still remnants of history that people just don't want to let go, or it's hard to let go when there's a lot of black people that feel like when they see shit like this going on today, and you still see people jogging getting shot by the police, or you see there's this recent story. There was a guy who was jaywalking,
got shot, and
he's dead
for jaywalking.
But there's a lot of black people who feel like this is bullshit. I don't want to hear you march about your rights and everything when you're not getting murdered. And the thing about it is, you can feel a certain type of way about that, but it's like they have a point. The same way that LGBTQ feels like we shouldn't have to jump through hoops to get fucking married. We're not bothering anybody. Again, you can feel a way about that, but they also have a point. Yeah. That's why, it's hard because people they're invested.
It's too much niche self-interest,
exactly,
kind of thing, and it stops us from realizing we're all going through the same shit.
Yep.
Maybe little different language, but it's essentially the same shit, and we can't fucking unite because of that.
Yeah, and then the one time we did, it was money, and it was the stock market, and we saw how much shit happened with that. But again, see, people look at it like, oh, they're trying to stop it because we'll be cutting into the 1% and taking out the billionaires. It's like, no, they don't give a fuck about that, because essentially they can stop that whenever. What they don't want, yeah, exactly. What they don't want is they don't want us to realize holy shit, if we did this with money, imagine what we could do with everything else around here. Because it just takes one person to get that idea. And if they have enough influence and power, they could change the world. Let Elon Musk keep talking crazy out here. I guarantee he'll be gone.